I should have known the moment she looked at me that this job would destroy everything I'd built. They told me it would be simple. Protect the billionaire, neutralize the threat, collect my paycheck, and walk away. Just another assignment. Just another client who'd become a file number in my records once the job was done. But then Elena Moretti descended that staircase in a silk robe, with her hair still damp from the shower. And she looked at me, really looked at me, like I was something more than just the hired security standing in her entrance hall. Like she could see straight through every wall I'd spent years building. In that single moment, I felt something shift inside me. Something dangerous. Something I knew I should run from. I didn't run. I stayed. I fell. I broke every rule I'd ever sworn to uphold. And by the time I discovered the truth, that nothing about this assignment was what it seemed, that I'd been manipulated from the very beginning, that the woman I'd fallen for had orchestrated everything, it was already too late. I was hers. The question was, could I forgive her for making me fall in love with a lie? Or would I walk away from the only person who'd ever made me feel truly alive? My name is Chen. I'm a professional bodyguard, and this is the story of how I was hired to protect a billionaire boss, but ended up losing my heart instead. The iron gates swung open with a whisper, and my car rolled up the cobblestone driveway toward a structure that looked like it had been pulled from the pages of a fairy tale. 3 stories of pristine white stone rose against the night sky, illuminated by strategically placed lights that made the entire building glow like something sacred. Tall windows reflected the moon, and I could see the warm amber light spilling from inside, promising luxury I'd only ever protected, never experienced. I killed the engine and sat for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. This was it, my first solo assignment with Sentinel Security, one of the most elite protection agencies in the world. 5 years of training, countless hours at the firing range, advanced tactical courses, hand-to-hand combat certifications, all of it had led to this moment. I was 28 years old, and I was about to become the personal bodyguard to one of the wealthiest women in the country, Elena Moretti. Even her name sounded like money. I'd studied her file obsessively over the past week. 34 years old, self-made billionaire who'd built her empire in tech and real estate before she was 30. No family to speak of. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 19, leaving her a substantial inheritance that she'd multiplied 100-fold. She was brilliant, ruthless in business, and notoriously private. The tabloids called her the Ice Queen of Manhattan because she never dated publicly, never made mistakes, and never let anyone close enough to see behind the carefully constructed facade. And now someone wanted her dead. The threats had started 3 months ago. Anonymous letters at first, then emails that bypassed her security systems, then a package delivered to her office containing a single white rose and a note that said, "Soon." The police were involved, but they had no leads. Whoever was targeting her was sophisticated, patient, and clearly had resources. That's where I came in. I grabbed my duffel bag from the passenger seat and stepped out of the car. The night air was cool against my skin, carrying the scent of jasmine from the manicured gardens that surrounded the property. My boots crunched on the gravel as I made my way to the front entrance. Massive double doors, made of dark wood, with brass fixtures that probably cost more than my annual salary. Before I could knock, one of the doors swung open. A woman in her 50s stood in the doorway, dressed in a neat black dress, with her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her expression was neutral, but assessing, taking in my tactical pants, black jacket, and the professional demeanor I wore, like armor. "Miss Chen?" she asked, her voice crisp and businesslike. "Yes, ma'am. Alex Chen, Sentinel Security." She nodded once. "I'm Mrs. Whitmore, the house manager. Miss Moretti is expecting you. Please, come in." I stepped across the threshold and into another world. The entrance hall was breathtaking. Polished marble floors stretched out before me, so perfectly maintained they reflected the massive crystal chandelier hanging overhead like a frozen waterfall of light. A grand staircase curved upward to the 2nd floor, its banister gleaming dark wood that looked like it had been hand-carved by masters. Fresh white roses filled crystal vases on antique tables, and the walls were adorned with art that I suspected wasn't just expensive, it was priceless. Everything about this place whispered wealth, but it was the quiet kind. Nothing was ostentatious or gaudy. Every detail had been chosen with exquisite taste, creating an atmosphere that was both intimidating and oddly intoxicating. Your quarters are on the second floor, East Wing, Mrs. Whitmore said, leading me toward the staircase. You'll have a bedroom, private bathroom, and a small sitting area. Miss Moretti's suite is in the West Wing. The security office is on the first floor, where you'll have access to all camera feeds and alarm systems. I understand you'll be doing a full sweep of the property tomorrow. Yes, ma'am. I need to assess all entry points, review the existing security measures, and establish protocols. Of course. She paused at the base of the stairs, turning to look at me with eyes that had seen everything and judged most of it wanting. Miss Moretti values her privacy. Miss Chen. She's allowing you into her home because the situation demands it, but she won't tolerate intrusion into her personal life. Do your job. Keep her safe, and maintain appropriate boundaries. Is that clear? The warning was unmistakable. I met her gaze steadily. Crystal clear, ma'am. She nodded, apparently satisfied, and began climbing the stairs. I followed, my trained eyes automatically cataloguing details. Security cameras in the corners. Good coverage, but a few blind spots I'd need to address. Windows with what looked like reinforced glass. Motion sensors along the hallways. The security was decent, but not impenetrable. Whoever was after Elena Moretti was sophisticated enough to make these threats, despite these measures. Which meant I'd need to upgrade everything. Mrs. Whitmore led me down a long corridor lined with closed doors and more artwork. We passed what looked like a library, a sitting room, and several other spaces I couldn't identify, before she stopped at a door near the end of the hall. This is yours, she said, pushing the door open. The room was larger than my entire apartment back in the city. A king-sized bed dominated the space, dressed in crisp white linens that looked like they'd never been slept in. A plush carpet covered the hardwood floor, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the gardens below. There was indeed a sitting area, with a comfortable-looking armchair and a small desk, and through an open door, I could see a bathroom that gleamed with marble and chrome. It's very nice. Thank you. Dinner is at 8, Mrs. Whitmore said. Miss Moretti requests that you join her. She wants to discuss the security arrangements. I checked my watch. 7:30. Just enough time to unpack and make myself presentable. I'll be ready. Mrs. Whitmore left without another word, closing the door behind her with a soft click. I stood in the center of the room for a moment, feeling oddly out of place despite my years of training. I'd protected diplomats, corporate executives, and even a movie star once. But something about this assignment felt different. The house, the atmosphere, the way Mrs. Whitmore had warned me about boundaries. It all created an undercurrent of tension I couldn't quite name. I shook off the feeling and got to work. Unpacking took less than 10 minutes. I travelled light and lived lighter. A few changes of clothes, my tactical gear, personal items, and my service weapon, which I secured in the room's safe. Then I moved to the window, studying the grounds below with a professional eye. The gardens were extensive, with winding paths that disappeared into shadowy groves of trees. Too many places for someone to hide. The perimeter wall was high, but not insurmountable. I could see security lights, but they were spaced too far apart. Tomorrow I'd walk every inch of this property and make a list of vulnerabilities. At 7:55, I made my way back downstairs. Mrs. Whitmore was waiting in the entrance hall, and she led me through a series of corridors to a dining room that took my breath away. The table could have seated 20 people easily, but only 2 places had been set, one at the head of the table and one to its right. The room was lit by candles and a smaller chandelier, creating an intimate atmosphere despite the space's size. Miss Moretti will join you shortly, Mrs. Whitmore said, and then she was gone, leaving me standing awkwardly beside the table. I didn't sit. Years of training had taught me to stay alert, stay standing, stay ready. I was here to work, not to be a dinner guest. But as the minutes ticked by, I found myself growing increasingly aware of my surroundings. The scent of white roses was stronger here, mingling with something else. Expensive perfume, maybe, or just the smell of wealth itself. Soft music played from speakers I couldn't see, something classical and haunting. Then I heard footsteps. They were soft, measured, the sound of bare feet on marble. I turned toward the doorway, my body automatically straightening, my face arranging itself into professional neutrality. And then she appeared. Elena Moretti descended the 3 steps into the dining room, and the entire world seemed to slow down. She was fresh from a shower, her dark hair still damp and falling in soft waves past her shoulders. She wore a silk robe in deep emerald green that clung to her figure and ended mid-thigh, revealing long, elegant legs. No makeup, no jewelry, nothing but natural beauty that hit me like a physical force. But it was her eyes that destroyed me. They were the color of dark honey, warm and intelligent, and utterly focused on me. She didn't look at me the way people usually looked at their security, with that dismissive glance that said I was furniture, part of the background. She looked at me like she was really seeing me, studying me, learning me, and something in those eyes made my breath catch in my throat. "Miss Chen," she said, and her voice was like honey too, smooth, rich, with a warmth that seemed at odds with her Ice Queen reputation. "Thank you for joining me." I had to clear my throat before I could speak. "Miss Moretti, thank you for having me." She smiled, just a small curve of her lips, but it transformed her face completely. "Please sit. And it's Elena. I think we'll be spending enough time together that formality seems unnecessary." Every instinct I had screamed at me to maintain professional distance, to keep the barriers up, to remember why I was here. But I found myself sitting, found myself returning that smile, just slightly. "Then call me Alex." She took her seat at the head of the table, and I was suddenly very aware of how close we were. Close enough that I could smell her shampoo, something floral and expensive. Close enough to see the water droplets still clinging to her collarbone. I forced myself to look away, to focus on the plate in front of me. Mrs. Whitmore appeared with dinner, some kind of perfectly prepared fish with roasted vegetables that looked like it belonged in a 5-star restaurant. She poured wine for Elena and water for me without being asked, then disappeared again like a ghost. "You don't drink on duty," Elena observed, her eyes on me over the rim of her wineglass. "No, ma'am. Never. Even when the duty is just sitting through dinner with your paranoid employer." There was humor in her voice, but also something else. A test, maybe. I met her gaze directly. "Especially then. You're not paranoid, Elena. Someone is threatening you. That makes this very real. And I need to be sharp every second I'm here." She studied me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling sensation of being X-rayed, of having every layer peeled back, until she could see straight through to my bones. "You're young for this kind of assignment," she said finally. "The agency told me you're one of their best, but you can't be more than, what, 27? 28? 28. An age doesn't determine ability." "No," she agreed, taking a sip of her wine. "It doesn't. Tell me, Alex, why did you become a bodyguard?" The question caught me off guard. Clients never asked personal questions. They barely acknowledged my existence, beyond the service I provided. "I wanted to protect people," I said carefully. "My mother was a police officer. She taught me that some people dedicate their lives to standing between the innocent and those who want to hurt them. I wanted to be that person." Wanted, past tense. I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth. "I am that person. But nothing. That's who I am." She tilted her head slightly, and a strand of damp hair fell across her face. I watched, mesmerized, as she tucked it behind her ear, with long, elegant fingers. "You're lying," she said softly. "Not about being a protector. That's clearly true. But there's something else. Something you're not saying." I set down my fork. "With all due respect, my personal motivations aren't relevant to keeping you safe." "No," she agreed. "But I find I'm curious anyway." The air between us seemed to thicken. I should have shut down the conversation, redirected to the security protocols we needed to discuss. Instead, I found myself answering honestly. "My mother died protecting someone. A domestic violence call that went wrong. She stood between a woman and her abusive husband, and he shot her. She was 41 years old. Elena's expression softened, real sympathy flickering in those honey-colored eyes. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. 10 years. That doesn't make it hurt less." "No, it didn't." I picked up my fork again, needing something to do with my hands. "Can we discuss the security arrangements?" "Of course." She leaned back in her chair, the silk of her robe shifting in ways that I absolutely should not have been noticing. What do you need from me? I pulled my mind back to professional matters, with effort. First, I need to understand your daily routine. When you leave the house, where you go, who you meet with. Second, I need to know about anyone who might want to hurt you. Business rivals, former employees, anyone with a grudge. Third, I need complete access to all security systems, and the authority to make changes as I see fit. Done, and done, she said immediately. I'll have my assistant send you my schedule. As for enemies, she paused, swirling the wine in her glass. I've made a lot of them over the years. Building an empire means stepping on toes, crushing competition, making hard decisions that leave casualties in their wake. I can give you a list, but it'll be long. That's fine. I'll investigate everyone. Even me? The question hung in the air between us. I looked up sharply, and found her watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Should I? I asked carefully. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes this time. Probably. I'm not as innocent as I might appear, Alex. I've done things I'm not proud of, made choices that haunt me. If you're going to protect me effectively, you should know exactly who you're protecting. I've read your file. I know your history. You know the public version, the sanitized story that my PR team crafted so carefully. She leaned forward, and suddenly, the space between us felt charged with electricity. You don't know the real me at all. My heart was beating too fast. This was dangerous territory, crossing lines that should never be crossed. But I couldn't seem to look away from her eyes. Then tell me, I heard myself say. She held my gaze for a long moment, and I saw something flicker across her face. Vulnerability, maybe, or loneliness, or something I didn't have a name for. Then she sat back, the moment breaking like shattered glass. Not tonight, she said softly. Tonight. Let's just get through dinner. Let's pretend that you're not here because someone wants me dead, and I'm not paying you an obscene amount of money to stand between me and a bullet. Let's just be two people sharing a meal. Every professional instinct I had told me to object, to maintain the boundaries, to remember my place. But looking at her, this powerful, brilliant woman, who suddenly seemed so utterly alone, I found myself nodding. Okay, I said. Just two people sharing a meal. Her smile returned, genuine this time, and it did something dangerous to my chest. We finished dinner, making small talk that felt surprisingly natural. She asked about my training, and I told her stories about the obstacle courses that had nearly broken me, the instructors who'd pushed me past every limit I thought I had. She told me about growing up in boarding schools across Europe, about building her first company in a cramped apartment with nothing but a laptop and determination. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by her laughter, a sound that was warmer and more genuine than I'd expected. She was funny, quick-witted, with a dry sense of humor that caught me off guard. And despite everything, despite the situation and the professional boundaries I was supposed to maintain, I found myself relaxing. When Mrs. Whitmore came to clear the plates, Elena stood. Walk with me? She asked. I'd like to show you the grounds, before it gets too late. I should have said no. Should have insisted on doing my own security sweep alone, on maintaining professional distance. But I found myself standing, found myself following her, out of the dining room, and through a set of French doors that led to a terrace. The night had turned cooler, and I watched as Elena wrapped her arms around herself, the silk robe providing little protection against the breeze. Without thinking, I shrugged out of my jacket and held it out to her. She looked at it, then at me, surprise flickering across her face. You'll be cold, she said. I'm fine. Take it. She hesitated for another moment, then reached out and took the jacket. Our fingers brushed as she did, and I felt a jolt of electricity run up my arm. From the way her eyes widened slightly, I knew she felt it too. She slipped the jacket on. It was too big for her, swallowing her frame. But somehow, she made it look elegant. Like everything else she touched, she transformed it into something beautiful. Thank you, she said softly. We walked down stone steps into the gardens, following a path lit by subtle ground lighting. The scent of jasmine was stronger here, mixing with roses and something else I couldn't identify. The grounds were even more extensive than I'd realized. with manicured lawns giving way to wilder sections, where trees created pockets of shadow. I used to walk here every night, Elena said, her voice quiet in the darkness, before the threat started. Now I barely come outside. I feel like a prisoner in my own home. That must be difficult. It's suffocating. She stopped walking and turned to face me, and in the moonlight, her face looked ethereal, like something from a dream. Do you know what it's like to be constantly watched? To never have a moment of privacy, of freedom? Even before you arrived, there were security cameras, motion sensors, guards patrolling the perimeter. And now you have me. I finished. Now I have you, she agreed. Another set of eyes watching my every move. The pain in her voice was real, and it struck something deep in my chest. I took a step closer, without thinking about it. I'm not here to imprison you, Elena. I'm here to keep you safe, so that eventually you can walk in your gardens again, without fear. So you can live your life, instead of just surviving it. No. She looked up at me. She was shorter than I'd realized, the top of her head just level with my chin, and in her eyes I saw something that made my breath catch. And if I don't want to wait for eventually, she whispered. What if I want to feel alive right now? The air between us was electric, charged with something dangerous and undeniable. I was acutely aware of how close we were standing, of the way the moonlight played across her face, of the fact that we were completely alone in the darkness. This was the moment where I should step back, re-establish boundaries, and remind both of us why I was here. Every rule I'd been taught, every line I'd sworn never to cross, demanded that I move away. But I couldn't. Elena, I said, and her name felt like a prayer on my lips. She reached up slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away, and placed her palm flat against my chest. I knew she could feel my heart hammering against her hand. I felt it the moment I saw you, she whispered. In the dining room. The way you looked at me. Tell me I'm not imagining it. I should have lied. Should have denied everything. But looking into her eyes, feeling the warmth of her hand through my shirt, I found I couldn't. You're not imagining it. Her breath hitched, and she moved closer. Close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from her body. This is dangerous, I said, even as my hand came up to cup her cheek. Her skin was impossibly soft beneath my palm. I know. I could lose my job, my career, everything I've worked for. I know. We shouldn't. I know, she said again, and then she rose up on her toes and pressed her lips to mine. The world exploded. Her lips were soft, warm, tasting of wine, and something sweeter. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, giving me one last chance to pull away, but I was drowning in her, lost in the sensation of her mouth against mine. Her body pressed close, her hands sliding up my chest to curl around the back of my neck. I deepened the kiss, all my careful control shattering like glass. My arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer, needing to feel every inch of her against me. She made a small sound in the back of her throat that sent fire racing through my veins. We kissed like we were starving for each other, like we'd been waiting our entire lives for this moment. Her fingers tangled in my hair, and I could feel her trembling. Or maybe I was the one trembling. It was impossible to tell where she ended and I began. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against mine. Alex, she whispered, and my name had never sounded like that before. Like something precious, something sacred. This is insane, I said. But I didn't let her go. Couldn't let her go. I know. She pulled back just enough to look at me, her eyes searching mine. Tell me to stop. Tell me this is a mistake, and we should forget it ever happened. I should have. God, I should have. But, looking at her, this brilliant, beautiful, lonely woman, who'd somehow seen through all my armor, to the person underneath, I couldn't do it. I can't, I admitted. I don't want to. Relief flooded her face, followed by something hotter, more intense. She kissed me again, harder this time, more demanding. I met her passion with my own, my hands sliding down to her waist, feeling the silk of the robe beneath my fingers. A sound broke through the haze of desire, a car alarm in the distance, probably from the street beyond the estate walls. But it was enough to bring reality crashing back. I pulled away, stepping back and putting space between us, even though every cell in my body screamed in protest. "We can't do this," I said, and the words felt like they were being torn from my chest. "Not now. Not when you're in danger, and I'm supposed to be protecting you. I can't be compromised. I can't let anything distract me from keeping you safe." Pain flashed across her face, but she nodded slowly. "You're right. Of course you're right. Elena." "No, I understand." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking small and vulnerable in my oversized jacket. "This was inappropriate. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry." "Don't apologize." I took a step toward her, then forced myself to stop. "This isn't just one-sided. I feel it too. But right now, your safety has to come first. Once the threat is neutralized, once you're safe." I trailed off, not sure what I was promising, what I could promise. She looked up at me, and in her eyes I saw hope, mixed with sadness. "Once I'm safe? Then we can figure out what this is." A small smile touched her lips. "Is that a promise, Alex Chen?" "It's a promise." She held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "Then, I suppose I'd better stay alive." "Wah. That's the plan." We walked back to the house in silence, maintaining careful distance between us now, but I could still feel the ghost of her lips on mine, still feel the imprint of her body pressed against me. I'd crossed a line tonight, broken every rule I'd sworn to uphold, and I didn't regret it for a second. At the terrace, Elena slipped off my jacket and handed it back to me. Our fingers brushed again, and electricity sparked between us. "Good night, Alex," she said softly. "Good night, Elena." I watched her walk back inside, watched until she disappeared up the stairs, and then I stood alone on the terrace for a long time, trying to get my heart rate back under control. I'd been hired to protect her. Instead, I was falling for her, and I had the sinking feeling that I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. I threw myself into work with manic intensity, desperate to focus on something other than the way Elena's lips had felt against mine. I conducted a complete security audit of the property, identifying 17 separate vulnerabilities that needed to be addressed immediately. The perimeter wall needed reinforcement in 3 sections. Several cameras had blind spots that could be exploited. The main gate's electronic lock was sophisticated, but not unhackable. I wrote detailed reports, made lists, contacted contractors, and spent hours reviewing footage from the past 3 months, looking for any sign of reconnaissance or suspicious activity. I barely slept. When I did, I dreamed of honey-colored eyes, and silk robes, and kisses that tasted like wine. Elena kept her distance, which was both a relief and a torture. I caught glimpses of her throughout the house, working in her study, taking phone calls on the terrace, and reading in the library. She was always polite when we crossed paths, always professional, but there was something in her eyes every time she looked at me, a heat that mirrored the fire burning in my own chest. On the 4th night, I was in the security office reviewing camera feeds, when Mrs. Whitmore appeared in the doorway. "Miss Moretti requests your presence in the library," she said, her face giving nothing away. My heart kicked into a higher gear. "Is something wrong?" "She wishes to discuss security matters with you. That's all I know." I followed her through the quiet house. It was late, nearly midnight, and most of the lights had been dimmed. The library was on the 1st floor, a massive room lined, floor to ceiling with books. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Elena sat in a leather armchair near the fire, dressed in dark slacks and a cream-colored sweater that made her look softer than the power suits I'd seen her wearing during her video conferences. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she was holding a glass of whiskey. She looked up as I entered, and the intensity in her gaze made my knees weak. "Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore," she said. "That will be all for tonight." The door closed behind me with a soft click, and suddenly we were alone. "You wanted to see me?" I asked, staying near the door, maintaining distance. "Sit down, Alex. Please." I moved to the armchair opposite hers, perching on the edge like I might need to bolt at any moment. The fire was warm against my skin, but it was nothing compared to the heat in Elena's eyes. "I've been avoiding you," she said without preamble. I noticed. I thought it would be easier. Thought that if I kept my distance, this, whatever this is between us, would fade. She took a sip of her whiskey, her eyes never leaving mine. "It hasn't." My mouth had gone dry. Elena, Velia, let me finish. She set down her glass and leaned forward, her elbows on her knees, her gaze intense. I've spent my entire life being careful, calculating every move, weighing every risk, never acting on impulse. It's how I built my empire. It's how I survived. That's smart. It's lonely, she corrected. Do you know how long it's been since I felt anything real? Since I wanted something just because I wanted it, not because it served some strategic purpose. And I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The other night, in the garden, and that was the first time in years, I felt alive. Really, truly alive. And then I let you walk away, because it was the responsible thing to do. The smart thing. She stood, moving around the coffee table that separated us, until she was standing directly in front of me. I'm tired of being smart, Alex. I'm tired of being responsible. I'm tired of being alone. I stood too, because staying seated while she looked at me like that felt impossible. What are you saying? Well, I'm saying I want you. I'm saying that someone wants me dead, and I might not have much time, and I don't want to waste what time I do have pretending I don't feel this. She reached up, her fingers ghosting along my jawline. I'm saying that you make me feel things I've never felt before, and I'm terrified and exhilarated, and I don't care anymore about being careful. Ugh, I could lose everything, I whispered, even as my hand came up to cover hers, pressing her palm against my cheek. I know, and I wouldn't blame you if you walked out that door right now, and kept things professional. I wouldn't blame you for choosing your career over whatever this could be. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. But I'm asking you not to. I'm asking you to take a chance with me. I looked into her eyes and saw everything she was offering, everything she was risking. This brilliant, powerful woman was opening herself up to me, making herself vulnerable in a way I suspected she never had before. And I realized that I'd already made my choice. I'd made it 4 nights ago, when I'd kissed her in the garden. I'd made it every moment since then, when I'd lain awake thinking about her, dreaming about her, wanting her. I'm supposed to protect you, I said, my voice rough with emotion. You are protecting me, by making me feel alive, when someone is trying to make me feel afraid. I pulled her close, my arms wrapping around her waist, and she melted against me, with a sigh that sounded like relief. This is insane, I murmured against her hair. I know. I've never done anything like this before. I've never gotten involved with a client. I've never wanted a bodyguard before. She pulled back, just enough to look up at me, her eyes searching mine. But you're not just my bodyguard, are you, Alex? You're something more. What am I? She rose up on her toes, her lips brushing against mine as she whispered, mine. And then she kissed me, and I was lost. This kiss was different from the one in the garden, that had been tentative, exploratory, testing the waters. This was sure, certain, acclaiming. Her hand slid up my chest, around my neck, pulling me closer. My hands roamed her back, feeling the softness of her sweater, the warmth of her skin underneath. We kissed, until we were both breathless, until the fire seemed cold compared to the heat burning between us. When we finally broke apart, she rested her head against my chest, and I could feel her heartbeat racing in time with mine. Stay with me tonight, she whispered. Not for. I just don't want to be alone. Please. I should have said no. Should have maintained at least that boundary. But I found myself nodding, found myself following her out of the library, and up the grand staircase to the west wing I'd never entered. Her suite was stunning. A massive bedroom with a 4-poster bed, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, and a sitting area with a fireplace. Everything was decorated in soft whites and creams, elegant and feminine without being fussy. She led me to the bed and we lay down together, still fully clothed, just holding each other. She curled into my side, her head on my shoulder, her hand resting over my heart. Tell me about your mother, she said softly. So I did. I told her about growing up the daughter of a cop, about learning to shoot before I learned to drive, about the pride I'd felt watching my mother in uniform. I told her about the night I got the call, about standing at the funeral, in a fog of disbelief and rage, about the way losing her had carved a hole in my chest that never quite healed. She sounds incredible, Elena said, when I finished. She was. She'd be proud of you, of the person you've become. The words hit me harder than I expected, and I had to blink back sudden tears. Thank you. Tell me something else. Something nobody knows. I was quiet for a moment, searching for the right words. I'm terrified all the time, I admitted. Every assignment. I'm afraid I won't be good enough, fast enough, strong enough, that someone will get hurt on my watch, and it'll be my fault. Her arms tightened around me. That fear is what makes you good at your job. It keeps you sharp. Maybe. Or maybe it'll get someone killed someday. Not on my watch, she said fiercely. And I couldn't help but smile. I thought I was the one protecting you. We protect each other. We lay in silence for a while, listening to each other breathe. Then I felt her shift, looking up at me. My turn, she said. Ask me something. Why doesn't anyone call you Ellie? Every article I read, every interview, everyone calls you Elena. Never a nickname. She was quiet for so long, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, my father only called me Elena. Never anything softer. Never anything that implied affection. He'd say it like a command, like a reminder of all the expectations I was supposed to fulfill. After he died, I kept it. Kept the coldness, the distance. It felt safer. Would you let me call you something else? If I found the right name. She looked up at me, vulnerability written across her face. What would you call me? I thought about it, studied her face in the dim light. Lena, I said finally. It's softer than Elena, but still strong. Still you. A smile curved her lips. Lena, she repeated, testing it. I like it, but only you get to call me that. No one else. Deal. She kissed me again, soft and sweet, and I felt something settle in my chest, something that felt dangerously like belonging. We talked for hours, sharing pieces of ourselves we'd kept hidden from the rest of the world. She told me about boarding schools where she'd learned to be alone, about building her first company in a cramped apartment with nothing but ambition and fear. She spoke of victories that felt hollow because there was no one to share them with, of standing on stages accepting awards while feeling utterly empty inside. I told her about the women I dated, who couldn't understand why I'd risk my life for strangers, about the loneliness of being the person everyone relied on, but no one really knew. We talked until our voices grew hoarse, until the sky outside began to lighten with the promise of dawn. And somewhere in those hours, wrapped in each other's arms, I realized I wasn't just falling for her. I was already gone. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful pretense. During the day, we maintained professional boundaries. I did my job, reviewing security footage, coordinating with the patrol guards, investigating the list of potential enemies she'd given me. The list was extensive. Former business partners who'd been squeezed out, competitors she'd crushed, employees she'd fired, for incompetence or betrayal. I ran background checks on all of them, looking for anyone with the resources and motivation to make credible threats. Elena went about her business with the same precision and power I'd read about in her file. She took conference calls with executives who visibly trembled at the steel in her voice. She made decisions that moved millions of dollars with the stroke of a pen. She was everything the tabloids said. Brilliant, ruthless, utterly in control. But at night, she was something else entirely. At night, she was Lena. She was soft laughter and vulnerability, whispered confessions and gentle touches. We fell into a routine. After Mrs. Whitmore retired for the evening, I'd slip into Elena's suite, and we'd spend hours talking, kissing, simply being together. She'd curl into my side and tell me about her day, about the challenges she'd faced, the victories she'd won. I'd tell her about my security concerns, about the upgrades I was implementing, about my growing frustration that despite all my investigating, I was no closer to identifying the person threatening her. Maybe they got scared off, she suggested one night, her fingers tracing idle patterns on my arm. We were in her bed again. We always ended up there, though we'd maintained some boundaries. We hadn't crossed that final line, both of us aware that, once we did, there would be no going back. People who make threats like this don't just get scared off, I said. They're patient. They're waiting for an opportunity. You sound worried. I am worried. Whoever this is, they're sophisticated. They've been watching you for months, learning your patterns, studying your security. That takes resources, And patience. This isn't some random person making empty threats. She was quiet for a moment, her hand stilling on my arm. What if they never make a move? What if they're content to just watch? To keep me living in fear? Then I stay until they do. Or until we find them first. She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at me with those honey-colored eyes that never failed to steal my breath. And how long are you willing to stay, Alex? The question felt loaded, full of meaning beyond just the professional arrangement. As long as you need me, I said honestly. What if I need you forever? My heart stuttered in my chest. We'd been dancing around this for weeks, both of us feeling the depth of what was growing between us, but neither willing to name it. Lena, I know, she said quickly. It's too soon, too fast, too complicated, but I can't help what I feel. You've become essential. The thought of you leaving, of going back to my life without you in it. She shook her head. I can't imagine it anymore. I reached up, cupping her face in my hand. I'm not going anywhere. Not until I know you're safe. And after that, we figure it out. Together. She kissed me then. Deep and searching. And I poured everything I felt into that kiss. All the words I wasn't ready to say. All the promises I wasn't sure I could keep. All the love. Yes. Love. I could admit it to myself now. That had taken root in my chest. And refused to let go. We were so lost in each other that we almost didn't hear it. The alarm. It was a soft beeping, easily missed if you weren't trained to listen for it. But I heard it, and I was moving before my conscious mind even registered what it meant. Stay here, I commanded, already rolling out of bed and reaching for my weapon. I always kept it close now, always within reach. Alex, stay here, I repeated, more firmly this time. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me. I saw the fear flash across her face, but she nodded. I slipped out of the room, heard the lock click behind me, and moved silently down the hallway, toward the security office. The alarm indicated a breach in the perimeter. Someone, or something, had triggered the motion sensors along the eastern wall. It could be an animal, could be a false alarm, but my instincts were screaming that this was real. I checked the camera feeds in the security office, cycling through views of the grounds. At first, I saw nothing. Then, movement near the eastern wall. A shadow that was too purposeful to be an animal. Too aware of the camera angles to be innocent. Someone was here. I activated the silent alarm that would alert the patrol guards and grabbed my radio. Perimeter breach. Eastern wall. Suspect is armed and aware of security measures. Lock down the house. I repeat. Lock down the house. The response was immediate. I heard the heavy doors throughout the mansion engaging their locks. Heard the metal shutters beginning to descend over the windows. The house was transforming into a fortress. But I knew that whoever this was, they'd planned for this. They wouldn't have come this far without an exit strategy. I moved through the house with my weapon drawn, clearing rooms systematically. The marble floors that had seemed so beautiful weeks ago now worked against me. Every footstep echoed, announcing my position. I moved to the carpeted areas when I could, staying low, staying alert. That's when I heard the glass shatter. It came from the second floor. From somewhere near Elena's suite. My blood turned to ice. I took the stairs 3 at a time, not caring anymore about stealth, only about speed. I had to get to her, had to protect her. The thought of anything happening to her made my vision narrow, made everything else fade away. Her hallway was dark, emergency lighting, casting everything in red shadow. I could see her door, still closed, still locked, but there was broken glass on the floor, and when I looked up, I saw it. The skylight above had been shattered. Someone had come from above, had bypassed the ground-level security entirely. Lena! I shouted, not caring who heard me anymore. Open the door. I heard her fumbling with the lock, heard her curse. Then the door flew open, and she was there, eyes wide with fear, and I grabbed her hand. We have to move. Now. But as I turned to lead her down the hallway, I saw him, a figure in black, face covered by a mask, standing at the end of the corridor. He was holding a gun. I didn't think. I just reacted. I pushed Elena behind me, shielding her with my body, and raised my own weapon. Don't move. The figure didn't move. Didn't lower his weapon. For a moment, we stood in a standoff. two predators measuring each other, calculating angles and odds. Then he fired. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. I felt the bullet whiz past my head. Felt Elena scream behind me. I returned fire, squeezing off 3 rounds in rapid succession. One of them hit. The figure staggered, clutching his shoulder, and then he was moving, running back toward the broken skylight. "Stay down," I commanded Elena, and then I ran after him. I burst into the room where the skylight had been shattered, one of the guest bedrooms I'd never entered. A rope dangled from the broken skylight, disappearing up into the darkness. The intruder was already climbing. I fired again, but he was moving fast, using the darkness as cover. By the time I reached the rope, he was gone. I could hear sirens in the distance. The patrol guards must have called the police. I stood there, breathing hard, adrenaline coursing through my veins, and listened to the sound of an engine starting somewhere beyond the perimeter wall. He'd gotten away. I secured the room, and then ran back to Elena. She was standing in the hallway, right where I'd left her, pressed against the wall, her face pale in the emergency lighting. "Are you hurt?" I demanded, my hands running over her arms, her shoulders, checking for injuries, even though I knew she hadn't been hit. I'm fine. Alex, you're bleeding." I looked down and saw blood on my sleeve. The bullet must have grazed me. I hadn't even felt it in the moment. Now that the adrenaline was fading, I could feel the burn. "It's nothing, just a graze." "Let me see." She tried to push up my sleeve, but I caught her hands. "We need to get you somewhere safe. The police are coming. But until we know..." "Alex." She said my name firmly, and I stopped. She looked up at me, and despite everything that had just happened, despite the fear I could still see in her eyes, her voice was steady. "Breathe. I'm safe. You kept me safe." I realized I was shaking. The reality of what had almost happened was crashing over me. How close he'd been. How easily things could have gone wrong. How I could have lost her. "I should have seen it coming," I said, my voice rough. "Should have anticipated. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You protected me." The police arrived minutes later, flooding the house with officers and forensic teams. I gave my statement 3 times, walking them through everything I'd seen. They found blood where I'd hit the intruder, found the rope, and found boot prints on the roof. But there was no sign of who he was, or where he'd gone. By the time the sun rose, the house was a crime scene. Police were everywhere, dusting for prints, taking photographs, asking questions. Elena handled it all with the same composure she brought to her boardroom negotiations, but I could see the toll it was taking, the shadows under her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly when she thought no one was looking. It was noon before we were finally alone again. The police had left, the forensic teams had packed up, and Mrs. Whitmore had been sent to stay with her sister for a few days. The house felt empty, violated. I found Elena in her study, standing at the window and staring out at the gardens. She changed into a simple black dress, and her hair was pulled back severely. She looked like the ice queen the tabloids wrote about, all traces of Lena hidden behind armor. "We should talk," I said from the doorway. She didn't turn around. "About what?" "About the fact that someone just tried to kill you. About the fact that this is escalating. I know. Lena." "Don't." Her voice was sharp. "Don't call me that. Not right now." The rejection stung, but I understood it. She was protecting herself, the only way she knew how, by rebuilding her walls, by becoming untouchable again. "Elena," I corrected, "we need to make some decisions. The police want you to consider a safe house, somewhere off the grid, until they can identify the threat." "I'm not running." "This isn't running. It's being smart." She finally turned to face me, and the coldness in her eyes made my chest ache. "I won't let them win. I won't let some faceless coward drive me from my home, even if staying here could get you killed. Especially then." She moved to her desk, every movement controlled and precise. "I've made my decision, Alex. I'm staying. You can either stay with me, or you can go. The agency can send someone else if you're not comfortable with the risk." The words felt like a slap. "You think I'd leave you? I think you nearly died last night because of me. I think you're standing there with a bandage on your arm because you put yourself between me and a bullet. I think..." Her voice cracked, just slightly, and I saw the armor fracture. I think I'm terrified that next time you won't miss. I crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into my arms. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed against me, her whole body shaking. I'm not going anywhere, I said fiercely. Do you understand me? I'm staying right here. You could die, Alex. So could you. That's not happening on my watch. She pulled back enough to look up at me, and I saw tears on her cheeks. In all the weeks I'd known her, I'd never seen her cry. I can't lose you, she whispered. When I heard that gunshot, when I thought, she couldn't finish the sentence. You didn't lose me. I'm right here. Promise me, her hands fisted in my shirt. Promise me you won't do something stupid and heroic and get yourself killed trying to protect me. I can't promise that. Protecting you is literally my job. Then quit. Walk away. Let someone else take this assignment. I stared at her, understanding finally dawning. This isn't about the danger. You're trying to push me away. I'm trying to keep you alive. By breaking whatever this is between us. She looked away, but not before I saw the answer in her eyes. No, I said firmly. You don't get to do that. You don't get to decide for both of us that I'm better off somewhere else. I made my choice, Lena. I'm staying. Even if it kills you. Even then. She searched my face for a long moment, and I let her see everything. The fear, the determination, the love. I still hadn't said out loud. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but I have conditions. I'm listening. You upgrade every single security measure in this house. You bring in reinforcements. I don't care what it costs. You don't take unnecessary risks. And... She hesitated, then continued. And we stop pretending this is just professional. I want you to move into my suite. I want you close enough that I know you're safe. My eyebrows rose. That's a significant change from maintaining boundaries. Last night changed everything. I'm done pretending I don't need you. Done pretending this is just about protection. She cupped my face in her hands. I love you, Alex. I'm terrified to say it, terrified of what it means, but I love you, and if something's going to happen to one of us, I don't want to waste another second hiding how I feel. The words hit me like a physical force, stealing my breath, making my heart stutter. I'd felt it for weeks, but hadn't dared name it, hadn't let myself believe she might feel the same way. I love you too, I said, and saying it out loud felt like stepping off a cliff. I've loved you since that first night, I think. Since you came down those stairs and looked at me like I was something more than just hired security. She kissed me then, and it was different from all the kisses before. This was a claiming, a promise, a declaration. We kissed like we were sealing a vow, like we were choosing each other in the face of everything, trying to tear us apart. When we finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. So, she said, a hint of her usual confidence returning. You're moving into my room, apparently. Good. You'll need to bring your things. I want you armed at all times when you're with me. I kissed her again, cutting off the list. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of everything. Promise? I promise. The next week was a flurry of activity. I contacted Sentinel Security and requested backup. They sent 2 additional agents. Marcus, a former military operator with muscles that barely fit through doorways, and Sophia, a surveillance expert who could hack any system ever created. Together, we transformed Elena's mansion into an actual fortress. We upgraded every camera, eliminated every blind spot, installed pressure sensors in the grounds, and reinforced every entry point. I had bulletproof glass installed in all of Elena's most used rooms. We established patrol patterns, created safe rooms, and mapped escape routes. If someone wanted to get to Elena now, they'd have to go through 3 highly trained professionals, cutting-edge technology, and enough firepower to start a small war. And through it all, Elena and I grew closer. We moved through each other's space with the easy comfort of people who'd been together for years, not weeks. She'd come up behind me while I was reviewing security footage, and wrap her arms around my waist, pressing her cheek against my back. I'd find her working late in her study, and bring her tea, massaging her shoulders until she relaxed. We learned each other's rhythms, each other's needs, each other's fears. At night, curled together in her massive bed, she told me everything. About her childhood in boarding schools, where affection was a currency to be traded, not freely given. About parents who saw her as an investment rather than a daughter. About building her empire as much to prove them wrong as to prove herself right. I was so lonely, she confessed one night. Her voice, small, in the darkness. I had everything I'd ever wanted. Money, power, success. But I'd look around at my life and realize I had no one to share it with. No one who saw me as anything more than Elena Moretti, the Ice Queen, the billionaire, the untouchable. I see you, I said, pulling her closer. The real you, Lena. I know. She pressed a kiss to my jaw. That's why I love you. I investigated her list of potential enemies obsessively, following every lead, no matter how tenuous. Former business partners, fired employees, crushed competitors. I dug into all of their lives, looking for the capability and motivation to make credible death threats. Most of them had moved on. Some had failed after Elena had beaten them, but they'd rebuilt elsewhere. A few still harbored resentment, but nothing that rose to the level of murder. I was missing something. Some piece that would make everything else make sense. 2 weeks after the break-in, I was in the security office reviewing footage, when Sophia came in, her laptop under her arm, and an expression on her face that made my instincts scream. What? I asked. I found something. In the financial records. Elena kept meticulous records of everything, and she'd given us full access. I'd been through them myself, looking for any suspicious payments or unusual transactions. Show me. Sophia opened her laptop and pulled up a series of bank transfers. Look at these. They're payments from Elena's personal account to an LLC registered in Delaware. The LLC is just a shell. Untraceable ownership. How much? $2 million over the past 6 months. Payments made monthly. Like clockwork. My stomach dropped. Why would she be paying someone through an untraceable shell company? That's the question, isn't it? Sophia looked at me with sympathy in her eyes. Alex, there's more. I traced the IP addresses of the threatening emails. They were routed through multiple proxies. Very sophisticated. But I managed to break through. And they originated from inside this house. The world seemed to tilt sideways. That's not possible. I've triple-checked. Someone in this house sent those threats. And given that the only people with access to Elena's private network are Elena herself and Mrs. Whitmore, I stood up so fast my chair fell over. You're saying Elena sent the threats to herself? I'm saying someone with access to her private network did. And she's the only one who could authorize payments that size, without anyone questioning them. My mind was racing, trying to find another explanation. Any other explanation. Mrs. Whitmore doesn't have access to Elena's personal finances. Only Elena does. I felt like I was going to be sick. Why would she do that? Why would she fake threats against herself? Sophia closed her laptop. I don't know. But I think you need to ask her. I found Elena in the library, exactly where I'd known she'd be. It was late afternoon, and the golden light streaming through the windows made her look ethereal, untouchable. She was reading, curled up in the leather chair by the fire, looking peaceful and content. Looking like Lena, not the Ice Queen. She looked up as I entered and smiled. That genuine smile she only gave me, the one that usually made my heart soar. Today, it made my chest ache. Hey, she said. I thought you were doing perimeter checks. We need to talk. Something in my voice made her smile fade. She set down her book carefully. What's wrong? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots Sophia had sent me. The bank transfers, the IP trace. The evidence painted a picture I didn't want to believe. Explain this to me, I said, and my voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. She looked at the screen, and I watched her face carefully. I'd been trained to read micro-expressions, to spot lies, to see through deception. But Elena's face showed nothing but confusion. I don't understand, she said. These are my accounts, but I didn't authorize these transfers. Sophia traced them. They're real. I'm not saying they're not real. I'm saying I didn't make them. She stood, moving toward me. Alex, what is this about? The threatening emails. They came from inside this house. From your private network. I watched the confusion on her face shift to shock, then to something else. Something that looked like understanding. And that's when I knew. She'd known. Maybe not about the specifics, but she'd known something was wrong. Lena, I said, and my voice broke on her name. Tell me the truth. All of it. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the war happening behind her eyes. Whatever she was about to tell me, she didn't want to. But she could see that I'd already figured out some of it, that lying now would only make things worse. Sit down, she said quietly. I'd rather stand. Please. This is complicated. I sat, but I kept distance between us. She noticed. I saw her flinch, but she didn't comment. The threats were real, she began. Someone really did want me dead. The letters, the first emails, the white rose, all of that was real. But after a while, they stopped. About 2 months before you arrived, everything just stopped. She wrapped her arms around herself. I should have been relieved. Instead, I was terrified. Why? Because silence meant they were planning something, meant they were getting ready to actually move. So, I continued the threats myself. The admission hung in the air between us. You faked being in danger, I said flatly. I was in danger. I still am. She took a step toward me, then stopped when she saw me tense. The original threat was real, Alex. Someone out there wants me dead. I kept the investigation active by making it seem like the threats were ongoing. Why? Because the police were going to drop the case without ongoing threats. They said there was nothing they could do, and I couldn't just sit around waiting for someone to make a move. She ran a hand through her hair, frustration and desperation warring on her face. I needed protection, real protection. So I hired Sentinel, and I made sure they'd send their best. You made sure they'd send me. She didn't deny it. Understanding crashed over me in waves. The whole thing. From the beginning. You orchestrated all of it. Ah! The original threats were real, she insisted again. But, yes, I manipulated the situation to get the protection I needed. You manipulated me. I stood, needing to move, needing to put space between us, before I did something I'd regret. Everything. The dinner that first night, the walk in the gardens, the way you looked at me. Was any of it real? Of course it was real. She moved toward me, desperation clear in her voice. Alex, please, everything between us is real. I didn't plan on falling in love with you. I didn't plan on any of this. But you did plan on deceiving me, on lying to me, on using me. I was trying to stay alive, by faking the very thing you hired me to protect you from. I was shouting now, all my training forgotten in the face of this betrayal. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? How completely you've compromised this entire operation? The danger is still real. Is it? I demanded. Or is that just another lie? How am I supposed to protect you when I don't know what's real and what's theater? She reached for me, and I stepped back. Hurt flashed across her face, but I couldn't care about that right now. Couldn't let myself care. Don't, I said. Don't touch me. Alex, please. Let me explain. You've been lying to me for weeks. What else is there to explain? I love you. That's real. That's the only thing that matters. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't love me, Elena. You can't. Love requires trust, and you've never trusted me with the truth. That's not fair. None of this is fair. I grabbed my jacket from where I'd left it, draped over a chair. I need to think. I need to figure out what's real. Where are you going? Away from you. I saw her face crumple, saw tears start to stream down her cheeks. But I turned away. If I looked at her, if I let myself feel her pain, I'd stay. And right now, staying felt like drowning. I made it to the entrance hall before Sophia intercepted me. Alex, not now. There's something else. Something you need to see before you go. The look on her face stopped me. What? She pulled out her laptop again, brought up a video file. This is from the night of the break-in. I've been analyzing the footage, trying to get a clear image of the intruder's face. She hit play. I watched myself running through the hallway, watched the confrontation, watched myself fire my weapon. Look at this, Sophia said. zooming in on the figure in black, on the mask he'd been wearing. She enhanced the image, cleaning up the pixels until I could see it clearly. There was an insignia stitched into the fabric of the mask, small, easily missed in the chaos of the moment. But unmistakable now. It was the logo of Sentinel Security, my agency. The world tilted again, and I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. "That's impossible," I said. "I checked the records. Sentinel Security has been on retainer for Elena Moretti's company for 3 years. They handle security for all her properties, all her corporate locations. So Elena doesn't just hire Sentinel. She owns them. She's the majority shareholder. Has been for 2 years. Everything clicked into place. The careful orchestration. The threats that started and stopped. The break-in that felt too choreographed. Too perfectly timed to be real. It was a test," I said. "All of it." She was testing me. Sophia nodded. "I think so. The intruder that night was probably another Sentinel agent. Someone she hired to stage the break-in. I felt like I was going to be sick. I shot him. I hit him in the shoulder. It might have been a setup to make it feel more real. Or it might have gone wrong. I don't know, Alex. But you need to talk to her. You need to get the whole truth. Tu me dis romaine." I turned and walked back to the library. Elena was still there, standing by the fire, her arms wrapped around herself. She looked up when I entered, hope and fear warring on her face. "You own Sentinel," I said without preamble. She didn't try to deny it, just nodded. "The break-in was fake. Staged." Another nod. "You hired someone to break into your own home, to fire a gun at us, to make me think you were in mortal danger." Yes. The simple admission was somehow worse than if she'd tried to lie. "Why?" I asked, and I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "Why go to such elaborate lengths?" She took a deep breath. "Because I needed to know if you'd stay. Not because I was paying you, not out of duty, but because you wanted to, because you cared. So you tested me, like I was some kind of experiment. I tested your loyalty, your commitment, your feelings." She took a step toward me. "I know how this sounds. I know how it looks. But Alex, I needed to know if what we had was real. By making everything else fake, the danger was real at first. Someone really did threaten me. And when you arrived, when we started falling for each other, I needed to know if you'd stay when things got dangerous. If you'd choose me over your career, over your safety, over everything else." I stared at her. This woman I'd thought I knew, thought I loved. "You could have just asked me." Words are easy. Actions are truth. And my actions? Shielding you with my body, getting shot at, being willing to die for you. What did those actions tell you? "Oh, that you love me," she said simply. "That it's real." And what do your actions tell me, Elena? That you manipulate everyone around you, that you don't trust anyone, that love to you is just another game to be won? She flinched like I'd struck her. "That's not fair." "None of this is fair," I shouted again. "You don't get to test people like they're business deals. You don't get to play with someone's life and call it love." "I'm sorry," she said, and tears were streaming down her face freely now. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. But please, Alex, please don't leave. We can fix this." "And how?" I demanded. "How do we fix the fact that our entire relationship is built on lies? Not lies. Strategy. Misdirection. But not lies." She moved closer, and this time I didn't step back. "My feelings for you are real. The person I am when I'm with you. That's real. Lena is real. She only exists because of you." I don't even know what's real anymore." She reached up and placed her hand over my heart, like she had that first night in the garden, a lifetime ago. "This is real," she said fiercely. "The way your heart races when I touch you. The way you look at me like I'm the only person in the world. The way you hold me at night like you're afraid I'll disappear. That's all real, Alex. The most real thing in my entire life." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. "I need time," I said. "I need to think." "How much time?" "I don't know." "Are you leaving?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. Saw the vulnerability, the fear, The desperate hope. Saw the woman I'd fallen in love with, beneath the manipulative billionaire, who'd orchestrated everything. I don't know, I said honestly. I need to figure out if I can forgive this, if I can trust you again. And if you can't, then I walk away, and you find someone else to protect you. I don't want someone else, she whispered. I want you. Then you should have trusted me with the truth from the beginning. I turned and walked out before she could respond, before I could let her tears change my mind. In the hallway, Marcus was waiting. He must have heard everything through the security feed. What do you need? He asked. I need you to watch her tonight. I'm taking the night off. He nodded, professional as always, not judging. Where will you be? Somewhere I can think. I drove into the city, checked into an anonymous hotel, and spent the night staring at the ceiling. My mind kept replaying everything, every moment, every touch, every word, trying to separate what was real from what was orchestrated, trying to understand how I'd fallen so completely for someone who'd been playing me from the start. But had she been playing me? Or had she been just as surprised by her feelings as I was by mine? By morning, I still didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. I couldn't leave her. Not yet. Not when there might still be a real threat out there. And not when I loved her, despite everything. I drove back to the mansion as the sun was rising. The gates opened automatically. They recognized my car, and I pulled up to the front entrance. Elena was sitting on the steps, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. She looked like she hadn't slept. When she saw me, she stood slowly, hope and fear naked on her face. You came back, she said. I came back. Does that mean... It means I'm staying until we figure this out. It means I'm not giving up on you. On us. Even though you gave me every reason to. I climbed the steps until I was standing directly in front of her. But it also means things change. No more lies. No more tests. No more manipulation. If we're going to do this, we do it honestly. Completely honestly. No more lies. No more lies. I can do that. I can do that. Can you? I challenged. Can you really let someone in? Can you really trust me enough to be vulnerable, without testing whether I'll stay? She was quiet for a long moment, searching my face. Then she nodded. I can try. For you, I can try. That's all I'm asking. I pulled her into my arms, and she collapsed against me, her whole body shaking with sobs she'd been holding back all night. I held her while she cried, while she apologized over and over, while she promised to be better, to be honest, to trust me. And I believed her. Maybe I was a fool, maybe I was making the biggest mistake of my life. But I believed her. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and tear-stained, and she'd never looked more beautiful to me. Come inside, she said, taking my hand. Please, I want to tell you everything. The whole truth this time. We went to her study, and she closed the door behind us. Then she sat me down and told me everything. The original threats had come from a former business partner, a man named Chen, who'd felt cheated out of a deal years ago. He'd sent the letters, the emails, the white rose. The police had investigated, but couldn't prove anything concrete. Then, suddenly, the threats stopped. I hired a private investigator, Elena said. He found evidence that David had left the country, moved to Singapore. The trail went cold. But I was terrified that he was just regrouping, planning something bigger. It's... So you continued the threats yourself? Yes. I used a VPN, routed everything through proxies, made it look like they were coming from outside. I wanted to keep the investigation active, wanted to justify hiring professional protection. She looked down at her hands. And, yes, I specifically requested you. I'd heard about you through industry connections. Young, brilliant, unattached. I thought. You thought what? I thought if I was going to have someone living in my house, watching my every move, I wanted it to be someone I might actually connect with. Someone who might understand loneliness. You researched me. Extensively. I know about your mother, about your career, about the women you've dated. I know you're ambitious, but caring, driven, but compassionate. I know you take your coffee black, and you run 5 miles every morning, and you have nightmares about failing to protect someone. She met my eyes. I know everything about you, Alex. And yes, I chose you deliberately. It should have felt creepy, invasive. Instead, I understood. She'd been looking for a connection the only way she knew how, through careful research, strategic planning, and controlled circumstances. And the break-in? That was Marcus. I hired him months ago, told him I needed to stage a realistic threat to test my security. He didn't know about you, didn't know about us. He thought it was just a security drill. She swallowed hard. When you shot him, when I saw the blood, I realized how badly I'd miscalculated. He was wearing a vest, but you could have killed him. You could have been killed. All because I needed to know if you'd protect me. You got your answer. I did. You put yourself between me and danger without hesitation. You proved that what we have is real. She reached for my hand, but the cost was too high. I see that now. I almost lost you. And not because of a real threat, but because of my own paranoia and trust issues. I squeezed her hand. Why do you have so much trouble trusting people? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the window. Can I tell you about my parents? Please. They weren't bad people. They were just cold. My father was old money, generations of wealth, that came with expectations and obligations. My mother married him for the lifestyle. Neither of them particularly wanted children, but it was expected, so they had me. She traced a pattern on the window glass. I was raised by nannies and sent to boarding schools. When I was home, which was rare, my father would test me. He'd set up elaborate scenarios to see if I was smart enough, cunning enough, ruthless enough to carry on the family legacy. He tested you, constantly. Nothing was ever given freely. Every act of affection, every word of praise, had to be earned through some trial. I learned early that trust was a weakness, that people always wanted something, that love was just another transaction. My heart ached for the child she'd been, growing up in a world where nothing was genuine, where even parental love came with conditions. I'm not your father, I said quietly. I'm not testing you. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I just want to love you. I said. She turned from the window, tears streaming down her face again. I don't know how to be loved without conditions. I don't know how to trust that you won't leave the moment I stop being perfect, or useful, or whatever it is you need me to be. I stood and went to her, pulling her into my arms. Then we'll learn together. You'll learn to trust, and I'll learn to be patient while you do. But Lena, I pulled back so I could look into her eyes. No more tests. No more manipulation. If you're scared, I'll leave. You tell me. If you need reassurance, you ask for it. We use words, not schemes. I can do that, she whispered. I promise I can do that. And you tell me the truth about everything from now on. No more secrets. She hesitated, just for a moment, and I felt my stomach drop. What? I demanded. What else haven't you told me? The money. The $2 million Sophia found. What about it? It wasn't for the fake threats. It was... She took a deep breath. It was for David Chen. To leave me alone. I stared at her. You paid him off? I tried to. My investigator tracked him down in Singapore and made contact. David wanted money to drop the vendetta. We negotiated. Settled on $2 million. I've been paying him in installments. Does he know about me? About this? No. The payments were made before you arrived. He thinks he won. Thinks he scared me into paying him. As far as I know, he stayed away. As far as you know, my investigator checks in monthly. David is living in Singapore, starting a new business with my money. He has no reason to come back. I processed this, trying to fit it into everything else I knew. So the original threat is resolved. You're not actually in danger anymore. I don't know if I believe that, she admitted. David was unbalanced, obsessive. What if the money isn't enough? What if he decides he wants revenge anyway? What if there's someone else I don't know about? I understood then. The fake threats, the staged break-in, the elaborate security measures. It wasn't about catching a specific enemy. It was about controlling an environment that had always felt dangerously out of control. You're not protecting yourself from David, I said slowly. You're protecting yourself from uncertainty. She looked at me with such naked vulnerability that it took my breath away. I can't stand not knowing, not being in control. Ever since my parents died, the car accident was so sudden, so random. I've been terrified of things I can't predict or prevent. So I try to control everything. Everyone. Including me. Including me. Especially you, she admitted. Because you became the most important variable. The one thing I couldn't afford to lose. I cupped her face in my hands, forcing her to look at me. You can't control love, Lena. You can't test it, or manage it, or manipulate it into being exactly what you want. Love is messy and uncertain, and sometimes it hurts like hell, but it's also the most real thing in the world. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. So am I. What do? We choose to trust each other anyway. Every day, we make that choice. Some days will be easier than others. Some days you'll want to fall back on your old patterns, and some days I'll want to walk away because it's too hard. But we stay. We fight for this. Can you really forgive me? After everything I've done? I thought about it honestly. Could I forgive the manipulation, the lies, the tests? Could I trust her again? Looking into her eyes, seeing the genuine remorse, and fear, and love there, I realized I already had. Yes, I said. I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. But because I understand why you did it. And because I love you enough to believe you'll do better. She kissed me then, desperate and grateful, and full of promises. I kissed her back, tasting salt from her tears, feeling her heart racing against mine. I love you, she said against my lips. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good. Being terrified means it matters. We stood there holding each other as the sun rose higher, painting the room in shades of gold. Outside, I could hear birds singing, could see the gardens coming to life. The world was moving forward, and we were moving with it. So what happens now? She asked eventually. Now we figure out if David Chen is really gone, or if he's still a threat. We maintain security protocols until we're certain, and we work on us, on building something real that isn't based on fear or control. That sounds hard. It will be, but worth it. She pulled back to look at me, a small smile playing at her lips. You know, for someone who nearly walked away last night, you're being remarkably understanding. That's because I had 8 hours to think about it. 8 hours to imagine my life without you in it. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. It was the worst 8 hours of my life, Lena. That's how I knew I couldn't leave. Not really. Not ever. Even though I'm a manipulative control freak with trust issues. Even though. Besides, I'm a workaholic, with a savior complex and intimacy issues. We're perfect for each other. She laughed, the sound bright and genuine, and I realized it was the first time I'd heard her really laugh since the truth came out. We're a mess, she said. The best kind of mess. She kissed me again, softer this time, sweeter. Stay with me today? No security work, no investigations, no responsibilities, just us. What about Marcus and Sophia? They can handle things for one day. I need you. Not my bodyguard. You. Alex. I should have said no. Should have maintained some semblance of professionalism. But I was tired of fighting what I felt. Tired of denying what I wanted. Okay, I said. Just us. We spent the day in her suite, talking and laughing, and slowly rebuilding the trust that had been fractured. She told me more about her childhood, about the loneliness and the pressure, and the constant feeling of never being good enough. I told her about the weight of always being the protector, about the fear that lived beneath my confidence, about the nights I woke up in a cold sweat, dreaming about all the ways I could fail. We shared our scars, our fears, our hopes. We peeled back layers until we were raw and exposed and utterly vulnerable with each other. And somewhere in those hours, I fell in love with her all over again. Not the Ice Queen, or the Billionaire, or even just Lena. I fell in love with all of her. The calculating businesswoman, and the lonely girl. The manipulative strategist, and the woman who just wanted to be seen. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room, Elena curled into my side with a contented sigh. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For staying. For giving me another chance. For seeing past all my defenses. to the person underneath. Always. I promised. Even when you frustrate me. Even when you scare me. Even when you make me want to walk away. I'll always see you, Lena. All of you. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I want to take down all the extra security measures. Go back to basic protection protocols. I pulled back to look at her in surprise. Why? Because you were right. I was trying to control uncertainty, instead of addressing the actual threat. And the truth is, if David wanted to hurt me, he'd have done it by now. He took the money and left. It's time I accepted that, and stopped living in fear. Are you sure? No, she admitted. I'm terrified. But that's kind of the point, isn't it? Trust means letting go of control. So, I'm letting go. I kissed her forehead. We'll do it gradually. Scale back slowly. See how it feels. But Lena, I'm not going anywhere. Even with minimal security, I'm staying. As my bodyguard? As your partner. If you'll have me. She looked up at me, hope and joy and love shining in her eyes. Is that what we are now? Partners? I think we've been partners for a while. We just needed to be honest about it. I like the sound of that. Partners. She smiled. Though I should probably warn you, being my partner means attending incredibly boring business dinners, and charity galas and board meetings. And being your bodyguard means you have to tolerate my paranoia about checking exits and clearing rooms, and always sitting with my back to the wall. I think I can live with that. Good, because you're stuck with me now. She laughed and kissed me, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt like we were on solid ground. Not perfect. We'd never be perfect, but real, honest, true. 3 months later, I stood in Elena's study, watching her negotiate a hostile takeover, with the same ruthless precision I'd read about in her file. She was magnificent, cold, calculating, absolutely in control. The executives on the video call visibly trembled when she laid out her terms. When the call ended, she spun her chair around and grinned at me. Did you see their faces? Terrifying, I agreed. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Too late. You've already seen my bad side. Multiple times. And I'm still here. Lucky me. She stood and came around the desk, wrapping her arms around my waist. I pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. How was your day? She asked. Quiet. No threats. No suspicious activity. No drama whatsoever. Boring. Perfect. We'd scaled back security as planned, keeping only basic measures in place. Marcus and Sophia had moved on to other assignments. David Chen had been monitored from a distance and showed no signs of renewed interest in Elena. Life had settled into something resembling normalcy. I still did security sweeps, still reviewed camera footage, still maintained protocols. But now I also helped Elena with her work, attended her business dinners, and accompanied her to charity events. I transitioned from bodyguard to partner seamlessly, and somewhere along the way, this had stopped feeling like a job and started feeling like a life. I have something for you, Elena said, pulling back to look at me. Oh? She went to her desk and pulled out a folder. I've been working on this for a while. Wanted to get everything finalized before I told you. I opened the folder and found legal documents. Lots of them. It took me a moment to understand what I was reading. You're giving me an ownership stake in Sentinel Security. 20%. Full voting rights. I want you to be an equal partner in the company, not just an employee. I stared at her. Lena, this is millions of dollars. I know. Consider it back pay for all the emotional labor of dealing with my trust issues. I laughed to spite myself. That's not necessary. Maybe not, but I want to. I want us to build something together, Alex. Not just a relationship, but a real partnership, in business and in life. I set down the folder and pulled her close again. You know I don't care about the money, right? I'd stay with you if you lost everything tomorrow. I know. That's why I want to give it to you. Because you don't want it, don't need it, don't expect it. You just want me. She cupped my face in her hands. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How precious? I have some idea, I said, thinking about how rare it was to find someone who saw past my armor, who understood my fears, who loved me not despite my flaws, but because of them. So, you'll accept? On one condition, name it. We used some of that money to start a foundation, something that supports families of fallen first responders. In my mother's name. Elena's eyes went soft. I think that's perfect. Then yes, I accept. Partners. Partners, she agreed, and kissed me. Later that night, as we lay in bed together, Elena's head on my chest, and my fingers running through her hair, she said, "Can I ask you something?" Always. Do you ever regret it? Taking this assignment? Everything that came after? I thought about it honestly. Thought about the lies and manipulation, the fear and danger, the moments when I'd almost walked away. Thought about how complicated and messy and imperfect everything had been. Not for a second, I said. You? Never. Well, maybe sometimes I regret the methods, but the outcome. She pressed a kiss to my chest, right over my heart. Best decision I ever made. Hiring me or falling for me? Both. Though falling for you definitely wasn't part of the plan. The best things never are. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm working on it, you know. The trust thing. The control thing. I haven't tested you, or manipulated you, or run a background check on anyone in your life in at least 2 months. That's very impressive restraint. I'm trying to be better. For you, for us. I tightened my arms around her. I know, and I see it, Lena. I see you trying. See you letting go. See you being vulnerable, even when it scares you. I'm proud of you. Even when I slip up? Especially then. Because you always catch yourself. Always apologize. Always try to do better the next time. She tilted her head up to look at me. I love you, Alex Chen. More than I thought I could ever love anyone. I love you too, Elena Moretti. More than I ever imagined possible. She kissed me, soft and sweet, and full of promise. Outside, the city lights twinkled in the darkness, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of traffic, of life moving forward. We'd come so far from that first night, when she'd descended the staircase and looked at me like I was something more than just hired security. We'd been through deception and danger, betrayal and forgiveness, fear and love. And we'd chosen each other. Again and again, we'd chosen each other. What are you thinking about? Elena asked, tracing patterns on my arm. How I was hired to protect you, but somehow you ended up protecting me too. From what? From a life where I never let anyone close, where I was always the protector, never the protected, where I was so busy keeping everyone else safe that I forgot to live. She smiled. Then I guess we saved each other. I guess we did. We lay there, in comfortable silence, two people who'd found something rare and precious in the most unexpected way. Our relationship hadn't started conventionally, hadn't followed any rules, and had broken every professional boundary imaginable. But it was ours. Messy and complicated, and absolutely perfect in its imperfection. And I wouldn't change a single thing. Alex? Elena said sleepily. Yeah? Stay with me. Always. I pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Always, Lena. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise. And as she drifted off to sleep in my arms, I knew I'd keep that promise. Not because I was her bodyguard, not because of duty, or obligation, or professional responsibility, but because she was mine, and I was hers, and that was the only truth that mattered. I'd been hired to protect the billionaire boss. Instead, I'd fallen completely, irrevocably, beautifully, in love, and in the end, that made all the difference. So here's the question that's probably on your mind right now. Did Alex make the right choice? Elena lied. She manipulated. She tested Alex's love instead of trusting it. But Alex forgave her and stayed. Was that beautiful? Or foolish? Drop your honest answer in the comments. Team forgiveness or team walk away? We want to hear your take on this complicated love story. And tell us, what kind of love story should we tell next? Enemies to lovers? Forbidden romance? Second chance at love? Your suggestion might become our next story. If this story made you feel something, anger, hope, frustration, or joy, hit that like button and subscribe to Love Beyond Rules for more emotional lesbian love stories that break all the rules. Share this with someone who believes in second chances, or someone who thinks Alex should have walked away. Let's start a conversation. Remember, real love doesn't follow the rules. And sometimes, that's what makes it worth fighting for. See you in the next story.